interview, we'll be finding out what life is like as a standby for one of the hottest shows on Broadway. Please welcome to the Zoom, Cailen Fu.
Hello,
Hello.
hello.
Hi. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
I am
Oh my gosh, I'm so
so
excited.
excited to talk to you and hear all about your journey. So, before we get into it, can you explain for those who do not understand what the word standby means?
Yes. So I'm essentially the understudy, the standby for Regina George and Gretchen Wieners. And so I go on whenever the principal actors are not there or they're sick, they have they're doing a press event. Someone torn their oh my God, I was gonna say ASL, but it's not ASL. ALC, ACL. Someone like breaks an ankle or something.
Yeah.
I am the person who goes on for vacations and all of that. So anytime there is a show, standbys, nurses, swings, we're all in the building for emergencies. And we do a very strange job because we cover usually at least two or more roles. And so we're very much like split brain of we have two different tracks or more that we're learning. So, or keeping alive in our brain. So it's a fun job. It keeps you on your toes.
So the range of notice could be a month out or literally an hour before the show.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my shortest notice was, I think it was like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I had already gotten on the train. I remember that. And it was I was getting on the train. It was honestly horrible because I thought, I really didn't think I was going on that day. There are some days you just kind of wake up and you're like, I think I'm going on today, because you're with the people, you're in the building 24/7. And so it's who's sick, who's not, who tripped and twisted their ankle on stage the night before. So you're kind of always alert. So I remember thinking and waking up being oh, I'm not going on today. So I ate so much cheese. I ate bread, had lots of dairy. And I got on the train, ready to go get my dinner. I was going to treat myself to Chipotle. And then I full on had to go on, and I was dang it.
For which track?
I had to go on for Regina, which was even worse because she has to just sing.
Fit into those costumes too.
Yeah. Oh my God, those corsets, and you have to dance. And I'm just oh, but honestly, Gretchen, even though they're not as fitted, they're not, or at least they don't look as fitted, they are not forgiving. They really are not, because everything, all of her costumes are so tapered and totally, they fit to your skin. You really don't have a lot of wiggle room. So either one of them would have been a bad thing.
You wake up every morning not knowing if you're going to be starring in a Broadway show that night.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very strange, Hannah Montana life. Sometimes you're Hannah Montana, sometimes you're Miley.
Yeah. Did you ever think you would be a standby?
Honestly, I think in college we always talked about covering and being an understudy for especially when you're early on. And I think everyone kind of has their own journey, how they get to Broadway or how they get to where they're at. But I honestly never thought I would be a standby, just because for a really long time I was only going in for, specifically with Mean Girls, I was only going in for Gretchen. And so they had never even looked at me for other characters. I think I was always in the Ashley Park, the Gretchen track, that one of the plastics. I was never seen for Katie or Janice or Regina. And so I really thought, I was oh, well, they only see me this way, so I couldn't be anything else. And then after a bunch of auditions with them, Ashley De La Rosa was leaving, and they're hey, we know we love you for Gretchen, but can you put some Regina on tape? And basically, I think they just needed to know that I could sing it, because we had worked in the room so much that I think they knew that as long as I could actually sing it and I could sell it, it would work out. But with the show specifically, I never assumed I'd be a standby, just because I never thought they'd look at me for someone who wasn't the Gretchen track. So.
That's a great lesson, though. When you're auditioning, you don't know what the team is looking for.
Yeah.
I actually had a similar experience recently where I was auditioning for a role and then ended up going in for another role in the same project, and I was shocked.
Yeah, it's always shocking because especially when you start to get farther along, you're oh, I'm in my callback or my second callback or something, and then all of a sudden they're hey, can you do you know this music? Could you just sing it? And you're no, I don't know it. I know this happened. I know Olivia Kaufman, who was my standby Standby sister, who now has moved up to Janice,
Mhm.
I know she had a really similar experience because she was originally going in for the tour, and then in the room, I think I can't remember if it was Casey or someone else. She tells the story so well, but they asked her, like, oh, like, can you sing Regina? And she's like, I literally have like never.
In the
I she's like, I'm in the room, and like I think Mary Mitchell was like, oh, like we'll go learn it in like the other room or something, and I think Casey was like, no, it's fine. He's like, just learn it here, it's fine. And I remember her telling me the story and her just being like, it was so terrifying because she's like, they've never considered me for this character. Why would they just have me learn it in the room? But it really shows you, like, be ready to like stay on your toes when you're auditioning because you have no idea what they're gonna ask. Because honestly, half the time they ask things and they're just like, it's like out of curiosity, like, oh, could we slot her in here? Would that also work?
But even after
So,
you get the job, you're always auditioning and they're always
oh
testing
yeah,
things out. So you just
yeah,
always have to be on your toes and ready. And I guess you can take away from that story is when you're a part of a project, know or be familiar with the other characters' tracks because if they need someone
exactly.
to jump into another role, wow. So has it always been Broadway for you, or what was your discovery of
Yeah.
theater like?
So I grew up in California, and I was very fortunate to go to a K through 8 performing arts school, and then I went to performing arts high school. And they were all they. I mean, when you're 4 and your parents are tossing you in kindergarten to an art school, like you don't have any like you
Yeah.
can't do anything about that.
Right.
That's not like there's nothing you can change or do anything about that. But I'm really, I mean, obviously, I'm very grateful for it now. Like it panned out well. I'm glad I'm not like
Yeah.
trying to be a soccer star or something.
Yeah.
But I think by the time I was in 8th grade, I had decided that I really loved the arts. I loved acting. I loved singing. I loved being in front of an audience and like getting to perform. Like I definitely grew out of the stage fright phase very quickly. And so by the time I think I was in 8th grade, I was like 13 or 14. I was like, yeah, I think like I want to be an actor. And like I think Broadway's always been on my radar. It's always been something that I was like, oh, I'll do it eventually. Like, I'll do it when I'm like, maybe when I'm out of school, maybe when I'm 30, 40, 50. I don't know. Because you always hear all the stories about the people who make their Broadway debuts when they're 50 or something. And it's like, oh yeah, I've been doing a lot of work and like, oh, I finally came to Broadway and I'm doing this, like check off that box.
Yeah.
But I think Broadway's always been a dream of mine. It's been a goal. I didn't expect for it to happen so quickly. And so in some ways it kind of has readjusted my perspective of what my goal list is, because usually it's like, this is something that kind of maybe it's like you're getting farther into your 20s or 30s and you're like, okay, I'm going to get this. Depends on like what track you are, whether you're in chorus, principal, whatever. But since I've, I guess, gotten to check off this box earlier than I expected, it kind of has realigned my, I guess not realigned, but like I've just now started to readjust my goals and like things I want to actually work towards, because I'm like, oh, okay, did this. Amazing. I would love to stay on Broadway. That'd be amazing. But I'm also really interested in doing new works and doing projects where I get to build my own character. I think like that's like one thing that we talked about, like what is a standby? I think the hard thing about being a standby is that you really only get to go on whenever they need you to go on. You're not there to do it every night, which is like, I mean, and every job has its both pros and cons. But I think doing this makes me go, oh, like I really want to take on a role and like have it be mine and really get to like figure it out every night. Yeah. I mean, I tried a lot of other things. I mean, I tried soccer. I tried, my gosh, not baseball, softball. I tried basketball. I tried all of the sports, and I think it really wasn't as coordinated as I wished. And I think I just loved it. I loved how it made me feel when I got to be in plays and I got to like just, I guess, I think something I really love is like I love to sing. I love how singing makes me feel and how I really get to, I don't know, like it's, you feel like, especially like when you're singing even in a chorus, like if you're singing with people, it's like you're just like part of a group. And I think there's like a sense of belonging there. And I think I found myself and my place in the world in theater. And so I think as I grew up, it just kind of became part of me. And I was like, yeah, this is what I do. Like, this is me.
Being on Broadway, has your passion changed? Is it greater or? Has it evolved?
I think it's definitely evolved. I feel like you always hear about people who say, "Oh, I wish I knew this when I was younger."
Right.
And in a lot of ways, I think if I knew what I knew about Broadway, what I knew about the business part of the
Mhm.
entertainment world, I think it would have deterred me. I think I definitely would have been. I wouldn't have been as optimistic. And I think
Mm.
something that makes people like quote unquote successful, whatever that means to any like to each individual.
Yeah.
Um, I think I probably wouldn't have been as yeah, open-minded or determined. I think I probably
Mm.
would have felt a little more like, oh, well, like only 1 in 10 people
Right.
actually da da da. And it's not like I grew up completely oblivious to it. Like I definitely grew up thinking, like, okay, if I'm gonna be an actor, like I'm probably not gonna be making millions. Like I'm probably not gonna be on a doctor's salary. Like, and I know that we all make sacrifices to do the things we love, and you just have to figure out if it's livable for you, if you can like be happy that way. Um, but I think like my perspective and like my love for theater and performing has definitely evolved because now it's like I understand the business side of it a lot more. And I think in some ways it has made it way less personal because it's like
Mhm.
no one's out to get you. Like no one's out
Mhm.
to get you and like take you down necessarily. At least hopefully, fingers crossed, no one is. But
As we
hopefully
know
no
of.
one's out
Yeah.
there trying to
Yeah.
take me down. But
Yeah.
in some ways it kind of makes you see how not personal it is. Like with projects,
Mhm.
like sometimes it's like, hey, like she has brown eyes and the writer wrote blue eyes, and like that's
Right.
like what the writer wants. And there's nothing like you can't. I mean, you could change your eye color, but like, is it really worth it?
Right.
Um,
Right. And
yeah.
that
So
project
I
wasn't
think
meant to be yours anyway.
exactly. And I'm totally a person who believes like if something didn't happen, no matter how much you wanted it, like it just means that you were not meant to do it. Like it
Yeah.
really like it would have for some in some universe, like it would have taken you down the wrong path and you wouldn't end up wherever you're supposed to end up.
Mhm.
So yeah,
So true.
I definitely it's like as hard as it is to like not get a project that you really wanted. Um, I think there's always a reason because something
Mhm.
else is going to open up. It might just take a while. So,
Yeah. So true. So when you were a senior in high school, how confident were you about really supporting yourself as an artist?
oh man, I was okay. I think I was honestly a little naive about
Mm.
providing for myself. I think I very much was like, oh, like it'll be fine. Like I'll figure it
Mhm.
out. And I think I'm very much that person who does figure it out. Like I have no like especially when I got to the city, I had no problem like, okay, I'm gonna go work like 2 or 3 jobs and like that's just what it is. And in some ways I just like there's a part of me that didn't consider that as being like a bad thing. I was like, oh, like I
Mhm.
need to go make money, so I'm gonna go do that. I know my skills outside of the theater world that are super I guess I can apply for a lot of different jobs that way. So I've worked in the costume department throughout like I worked at our costume department throughout high school and in college. And so I knew that I had like costume experience. So I know like within the TV and film world, there's like the costume world that I could go into.
Mhm.
I also really, I don't know, truly, you couldn't ask me why I did this, but my freshman and sophomore year of college, I was a store manager for a small boutique. I was for 2 stores. So I was working 40 hours a week my freshman and sophomore year of college. Um, couldn't tell you why. I didn't need to. Like my like there was no reason for me to be
Yeah.
doing it. But like I think I just really loved working and I loved having responsibilities. And so I know that about myself. And so when I got to New York and it was really time for me to start actually financially taking care of myself, setting
Mhm.
myself up so I could actually audition without having to like constantly rearrange my schedule. I knew I was like, okay, I have retail experience, I have assistant experience, I have
Mm.
costuming and like tech crew experience. And so kind of, I think maybe I wasn't thinking about it early on when I was actually in high school and college, but I think a lot of the stuff and like I guess what just makes me me slowly was setting me up to like actually be able to have
That
skills to do
is
other things
such a good point. That's such a good
besides
point. You have to
theater.
have a life outside of theater and
Yeah,
performing.
something I really loved about my college experience was that we were taught to first and foremost like yes you can sing and dance and act your face off and you can be a triple threat, but if you're not a human being, like it's like you're not going to be memorable beyond your talent, and everyone's talented. So it's like, what do you want to be remembered by? And so I think something that has been really ingrained in me through high school and through college was to be a well-rounded artist and human. And so being able to have an identity and not just be like, I'm Cailen the actor, is really important, I think. So yeah.
If you think about it, the audience relates to the human in the performer, not the high kicks and the belts.
Exactly. They can appreciate it. They're gonna like, oh my God. They probably be standing up, clapping and yelling and screaming for the high kicks and belts. But the thing that they do take away, it's like those are things they're going to take away. But in the moment, if they're relating to someone, if they're relating to the human part of them, of that character. And so I think like, I know I try to bring that into all of the roles I do. And I think especially like, I think we all have both weaknesses and strengths when we're playing roles. And like, I know like in Mean Girls, like there are weaknesses where I'm like, oh dang, like, you know, I'm not this kind, I don't have this skill or this skill, but you know, I'm going to make up for it by giving them a bomb ass scene. And this is going to be a great scene and they're going to feel it. So.
Also, if your only identity is a performer and you're not booking jobs, you're going to spiral. I have found that you have to have creative outlets that don't rely on someone else's approval.
So during the pandemic, it's interesting you say that. I started trying to search for something that was a creative outlet that I didn't feel like I guess I think there's a whole new pressure of like having a social like personality and just having like some like I guess you online of literally a person that people can be like, oh, this is who she is, like this is what she does or whatever, what represents her. And I was discovering during the pandemic, during quarantine, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, I feel so lost because everything I do, because like we're really doing nothing during the pandemic, I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I have to do something and show people that like I'm still alive and like doing things. And something I found was like, oh my gosh, like I just didn't have anything to myself. I didn't have anything that I wasn't sharing with people. And I think that's a struggle that people struggle with now with social media, because it's hard because like you don't want to overshare, but you also want, if people are invested in your life, you want to involve them. But I was discovering like as a creative, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, I don't have anything. And so I like slowly started like embroidering and watercoloring, and like I don't post any of that, I don't show it to anyone, I don't let anyone see it, mostly just because I'm like, I'm not waiting or looking for people to say, oh, that's so good, Cailen, like wow, like you're also like a graphic designer artist, and like wow, and I'm like, and it's like I think it's so important to have something that you don't feel like you need to share, like especially I think during the pandemic everyone was just like screaming, figuring out what am I going to post for content, like what's happening, because nothing was happening. And so I just found it interesting, like during the pandemic, feeling I'm like, what's mine, you know?
So what were you doing right before the Broadway shutdown?
Right before the Broadway shutdown, I had just, gosh, what was I doing? I was doing Mean Girls on Broadway. I was doing that 24/7. We had actually just finished teching the show. So we were in the process of changing our show from the original Broadway to the tour version. And it was honestly a really exhausting time because, so normally, I mean, it was exhausting for everyone, and everyone had their own reasons as to like why they were truly just about to fall over. But for me, like I had been in rehearsals. So when, as a standby, if you're not on stage, you're either upstairs in your dressing room or you're in rehearsals if new people are coming into the show. And so anytime that we had new cast members, and we were putting in a whole new cast of principals because a lot of the original cast, they were leaving. And so I had been in rehearsals with all of these people, rehearsing them and like being both the Regina and Gretchen, doing a lot of talking to myself.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine.
Like they talk to each other so much, and so like I literally am just like talking back and forth to myself. But
Are you ever on stage and you forget which character says which line?
Oh, absolutely. I have to, and honestly, it makes me feel like I'm very present because I really have to like focus my brain on, okay, you are this character. Like, look at the other person who is the other character. Sometimes that you play, but you are not that character right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it really makes you be present because you can't say the other person's line because it does not make sense, like for either of my characters.
Right, that's true. So, they're like the polar opposites.
Yeah, truly polar. And like if Gretchen said one of Regina's lines, everyone would be like, what the heck? Like, what are you doing? But yeah, so we were in tech and I was rehearsing all these cast members with the assistant director, Casey. And so then we went to tech and it was just really crazy. I think I was at the theater more than I was at home.
How has quarantine been for you? Was it really hard or was it nice to have a break at the beginning?
At the beginning, I think everyone part of our show, we were relieved because it was like, oh my gosh, like we get a break. Because truly, I mean, we were, I think, on the brink of people falling apart. Like all of the swings and standbys, we were all just like slightly terrified because we were going to reopen the show, have all the new cast. And like everyone was so exhausted. And we're like, oh my gosh, like anyone in like the principal cast could fall and one of the swings or standbys are gonna have to go on, never being rehearsed.
Well, like, okay, what happens if the principal cast can't go on and then you cannot go on?
So I mean, like it kind of becomes someone has to go on, I think.
Right.
I think we haven't run into that, but there were definitely moments where we knew that, like, okay, if like this person goes out, we know that like Marie is gonna go on for that person, like in the ensemble.
Right.
And so like I was kind of lucky because since I'd been rehearsing with the new cast, I was for a couple of weeks before a lot of the principal cast were actually on stage rehearsing. I was getting to do a lot of the new scene work, the new lines with the new cast. Right. And so like I was sort of rehearsed, but it was like kind of just like out of circumstance because I was not in a show, so I was there doing the new show at rehearsal. But
wait, so you're doing a new show during the day and then doing the old version at night?
Yeah, it is so bonkers because it's like they were the smallest changes. Like there are sections of the show that are very, very different, and you're like, oh my gosh, this feels so different. But then there are other ones that's just like the timing is slightly, you have to listen to the music and it's slightly different, and you have like slightly different lines. Yeah, it was so crazy trying to balance all of it in our head.
Did the choreography change?
Some of it did. Yeah. Some of it did. I think at the end of Act 1 in Fearless. So that's the thing that's crazy because I didn't learn that until everyone else learned it, I think. But there was like, it was really, really, I was really nervous about when we were rehearsing and then if I was gonna have to go on and do the old show. Because for a while, I think everyone was in this really nice limbo area where like everyone got the script for the new show, but then no one had to think about it. They could just focus on the old show. And then we like slowly got to the point where everyone had to have both of them in their heads, and learning the new choreography for Fearless was really weird to then go that night and do the old show. So yeah, it was crazy.
Do you feel like your training in college helped prepare you for this experience?
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. I think something that we did really well, or like I really appreciated about the training at Irvine, was that we learned how to do things quickly and efficiently. And we learned like a lot of our like groundwork was basically like emptying out any fears or hesitations about like who we were, what these characters are, our abilities, and like basically like building up from there and being like, okay, like I know that like this is in my toolbox and these are the things I'm like I still have to figure out. Like I don't really know how to do this yet, but I can always like we solidified what we were naturally good at or what we came into college with. And so I think like knowing when I walked into a room or into a process, okay, I know I can memorize my lines really quickly. I can look at a page if it's a new page and like go on stage and do it and it'd be fine. Like those kind of things, like there were things I knew that I could do like during this process of switching shows. I was like, okay, I know I'm really good at this. These are the things I actually have to work on. I have to work on these things that like I'm not very good at. And so it was easy to kind of, I think from being in college, because we I mean, like your class schedule is crazy. Like you're constantly having to do different scenes and songs and theory and dance classes and all these things, and like you're juggling so much. So I think naturally college kind of prepares you to be able to juggle a lot. But yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, it's not an easy part of the job for sure.
How do you take care of your mental and physical health with such a rigorous schedule?
Honestly, sleep as much as I can, water as much as I can. I'm really bad because I love Doritos, I love Cheetos, I love my snacks. And so it's really hard, like during stressful times, like I allow myself like one bag of one of those things, and like you can only go through one of these. But I mean, I think for me, setting a schedule and knowing, like during that time especially, like I wasn't taking extra trips to the gym. I was doing more yoga based things, and I think mentally, like taking time for yourself and knowing, even if that means like you're just taking like 1 or 2 minutes to be by yourself and like just be alone with your thoughts, journal. I journaled a lot because I mean, I think as a standby and as like an understudy, especially in the professional world, it can get really weird mentally, because when you don't go on for a long time, you're like, oh my gosh, like, am I even capable of doing this? Like, why am I here? Like, I'm not good enough to do the actual role, or blah, blah, blah. Like, you see like mean comments about you online or something, like things like that, like definitely can take you down. But I've really discovered that like journaling and not letting random strangers' opinions of me or of our show or of a person affect me. But I really got into yoga and meditation over this last year, and that has kind of deepened over the pandemic, the quarantine time, because we've had so much time to sit and think and just like be. But yeah, I think the mental health part of it is just reminding yourself. I think this is what I do. I remind myself of like why I'm there and what my actual job is, what I'm supposed to be there doing. Because I think it's really easy to feel like you're not doing enough, like you're in your position because you didn't do blah 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 blah. So I don't know. I think reminding yourself that you are what your actual job is. It's not your job to take care of anything else besides what you've been hired to do. Is important. Yeah.
What was the hardest part about being on Broadway for you?
Gosh, the hardest part. I don't think I've been asked that yet. I think for me, I'll say pre-pandemic, I was not a very patient person. I'm still working on it. But I think that was definitely one of the harder things, is waiting to go on. I'm definitely more of a like actor, musical theater person. Like I really love acting. I come from a Shakespeare background. I come from loving that world. And I think I crave improvement, and I crave being able to challenge myself and do things over and over and over until like I finally find my version. And when you're a standby, you can't always do that because you don't know always when your next time you're going to go on. Sometimes you'll get like hints from like the stage manager, like, hey, like I think this person's going to call out, be ready. And that's great. But sometimes like I think it's the waiting, it's being patient and knowing, it's the mental game. Like we just said, like the mental game of knowing that you are enough and you're totally fine. You've been hired for a reason. But I think like I got hired like, and I was a year and a half out of school. And so
That's
I think
amazing.
I still had like, thanks. So, like, but it was like really, you're still in like university brain where you think you're constantly trying to figure out what's wrong or like what you can do better. And so I think for me, I really struggled at first with being like, well, why am I not on? And I'm like, wait, Cailen, your job is to be the standby.
Right.
Like, you're totally fine. Like you're not on because it's not your job to be on. Your job is to be able to play both characters at a moment's notice. And that's pretty cool. And I had to remind myself that. I had to remind myself that like, and also to like enjoy the job. Like I don't know when I sign my contract if like the show's gonna be open for 2 months or a year or longer. I have no idea. So I think like for me, the hardest part was reminding myself why I was there, what my actual job is. I way often, way too often, I try to take on more responsibilities than I really should. And I think honestly, I've definitely annoyed my stage managers because I'll be like, oh, like, should I do this? And they're like, Cailen, no, that's literally not your job. And I was like, okay, great. But yeah, I think enjoying it. I think in the beginning I was a little too eager to keep moving forward. I think when you're in the auditioning world, you're constantly thinking about, okay, the next step, the next one. And sometimes you forget to enjoy it. You forget to enjoy your time. Yeah.
Is it as magical as you thought it would be?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so cool. I will never be able to forget my actual first moment performance wise on Broadway with Mean Girls, because I was on the little plastic table and I was Gretchen, and I remember just sitting there behind the pink, like behind the walls.
Yeah.
When it's like da 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 and it opens, there's pink and there's smoke, and it's just like so epic. And I don't think I could have had a better like entrance.
Literally.
Because it's just so like epic, and like all of the attention's on you and the crowd goes wild, and I'm sitting there like, I think something that I kind of skipped over a lot in my brain was like, oh my gosh, like I'm sitting in I'm covering 2 like Tony nominated roles. Like these were nominated for Tonys, and there's something that's really cool, and like awards are whatever, like awards are awards, but there's something like, I think as a kid, like that has always seemed way more unreachable than Broadway to me, and like Tonys are like, that's just a special thing. And so then to like sit in a role where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have to do this role now. This has been like Ashley Park was nominated for her work in this role, and like I'm gonna do my work in this role now. And I think that was something that really hit me, because I was like, wow, like that's like the creme de la creme of our theater world, of like that's like the most respected award, whatever. There's just something special about it. And I just remember feeling so grateful and so shocked that I was there. And I remember just I'm like holding Taylor Louderman's leg and like the phone. I'm like, please phone, don't fall out of my hand. And it was just bonkers. Cause like, and then they start rolling you out and they're like, they call these 3 to plastics. And I was like, it's me. I'm one of them.
Wow. What date? Do you remember the date?
It was August 14th. Yeah.
Of
what year? A matinee of 2019. I debuted on a double show Wednesday. It was very strange.
Did you do both shows? I
did both shows, yeah.
Wow.
So what was crazy though, and like insane, was that I debuted on a double show August 14th, and then the next day I started rehearsing Regina. So then I was rehearsing Regina during the day and performing at night. Which was totally weird. It was so weird, because it was like a completely different character that I had never really had to embrace. Like obviously I'd been learning Regina for a while, but it was so weird to finally be doing both of them at the same time, and I had to commit to both of them in both rehearsals and performances. And it's very strange.
I'm stressed just hearing this.
It was really scary, and also like I didn't know who I was as Regina. Like I really didn't know who that version of myself was, because I had never been seen for her. I had booked this standby off of a self-tape because they had seen me so many times as Gretchen. And then I just got an email saying, hey, can she sing Regina stuff? And that's like, and then that was that. But they had never seen me in person as her. And so I like truly on this tape just like threw up what I assumed, or like what I thought she was in my own body and in my own voice. And I had like no direction from previous auditions as like before I got the Regina Standby. So Regina was so much harder for me, because I was like, I am so much a Gretchen. I'm so Gretchen-y. And Regina was different. And I was like, whoa, this is weird, because it's also higher stakes. It's a fun challenge. Yeah. But it's really high stakes because people are paying a lot of money to come see Regina George and like all of these characters. So yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
Wow. So with current events and everything that happened in 2020, why is being an artist important to you?
Oh, wow. I think being an artist right now is really important because, one, we're the only industry that has been shut down this entire time. Like, we are the only ones who have not really, up until recently, the most recent bill, but we really haven't gotten any help and really haven't gotten any um, support financially or like timeline wise of like when things could or could not open up. And I think there's something naturally like very honest about artists because we are here doing something because we are putting ourselves on the line, and we have hopefully grown in our craft and in our artistry to be open, to accept, to like change with the times and change with what's happening around us. And I think we do have a voice because I mean, what has everyone been doing during the pandemic? They've been watching
turning
TV
to art,
and they've been watching movies. They've been turning to art. And I think because of that, so many people have found new artists and have found a new love for TV shows or musicals or whatever.
What have you been watching?
Oh, I've been watching Succession on, was it HBO Max, I think? Search Party. I watched Queen's Gambit. Oh my gosh. I watch a lot of like very kind of like not obscure. Like I know other people are watching them, but like I watch a lot of indie movies with my boyfriend. He loves movies. So we have movie nights all the time. And we finished all like 6 or 7 seasons of West Wing. So it's been truly crazy. But I think like artists do have a voice right now because so many people are turning to art. They're
it's an escape.
Yeah, it's an escape. I mean, it's like the idea of like why musical theater was first created was a form of escapism because we wanted to escape away from reality because reality was so bad. And so yeah, I think it's hard right now to be an artist, I think, because we're looked at to provide entertainment, to provide escapism or relief to people to escape from the pandemic, from the deaths, from the government cool craziness, from the racism, from everything. And it's hard because it's hard as an artist because we don't often get the respect back. We often are looked at like we need to provide. We don't ever accept anything, like we don't ever get anything back for it. So I think that has been hard for artists during this time because it's also like with theaters, like how quickly do they take their artists off the payroll, but they keep the admin, and at the end of the day, it's like artists are multifaceted too. Like I've been an assistant like for half my life. Like I did a lot of assistant work growing up, and like I could balance the checkbooks and also be in the shows. And so I think it's hard as an artist right now because we're seeing in a lot of theaters like how much we actually are respected. And I think a lot of people are learning how to stand up for themselves, learning how to stand for their worth. So yeah.
Who are performers that you look up to?
Oh man, I love Philippa Sue. I love Audra McDonald. Oh my gosh, who else? Those are like my Sutton Foster. Some of those are both really great. Those are all very great artists. I love I've always I guess I look up to a lot of different artists, but like the people I've always kept an eye on, like who are what are you doing? Like I always watched like Laura Osnes, and someone else who's coming kind of showing up on all of my TikToks and Instagram and social world is Joshua Henry. I just think he's such a phenomenal artist. I'm obsessed because I just think he's just so great. And Jessie Mueller, she's my favorite person. Yeah, I think we have there's such a wonderful group of artists who've been around for longer than me at least, who I am just a couple of degrees away from, which is really kind of crazy when I think back to college, being I love these people, they're so great, and I'm oh my gosh, that is what's her face's best friend, that's weird.
Right, yeah.
But it's been really cool to kind of make some of those connections and be oh my gosh, you're just a person, and you do also have a lot of really, really good insight of for younger artists. And
yeah,
I don't know, I think it's really powerful how many artists are standing up during these times and really, I don't know, sharing their voice and not being just an artist, like you are being an activist. So yeah.
Oh, totally. Where would you love your career to take you? Are you interested in TV and film?
I would love to do TV and film. I truly know nothing about it, and so I'm very much a newbie to it. I've done a lot of TV and film auditions. I grew up like loving the CW. Like my dream is to like truly be a like background person on the new Gossip Girl. So I'm manifesting that now.
Have you seen Jane the Virgin?
Yes, yeah.
Best show in
like,
the world.
So good.
In the world, yeah.
So good. Honestly, so many ups and downs.
I met Yael Grobglas, who plays Petra. Yeah, at the Hollywood Bowl. I went to see Into the Woods at the Hollywood Bowl. And you know, the Hollywood Bowl is huge. And I saw her and I started crying.
She's iconic.
And the entire show, I was just looking at her.
She's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, it's actually funny. Okay, I don't know why this story just reminded me. So I don't think I've told anyone else this, but there was a time. So there was a time where I almost killed Ben Platt. He doesn't know me. We don't know each other. I'm a big fan of his work. I think he's fantastic. But I almost killed him with my car.
That might have to be the title of this video. Cailen Fu almost kills Ben Platt.
I know. He needs to know that I'm I'm the reason why he's still living. So, because I stepped on my brakes. So I was at the Wallace in LA, and I was seeing, what was it? Oh, I was seeing Marley We Roll Along. I think it was Marley. Yeah, Marley We Roll Along. And no, I'm so sorry. It was Deaf West. Spring Awakening.
Okay.
And him and his friend walked in front of my car. They totally had the right of way though. They totally had the right of way. And I was turning with my friend Melody, and I literally had to brake because we were going down into the parking lot, and they like stepped right in front of my car, and I braked, and like I don't even think they noticed. Like I don't even think he knows that like this almost happened. But I truly almost ran him over with my car, and I'm so glad I pressed my brakes because I was like, oh my gosh, I saw him in the lobby. Like I 100% know it was him. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh. And like as Dear Evan Hansen's come out, and as he's recorded some music, and he's like, his career's really I mean, at this point he had already done, I think,
Pitch Perfect,
yeah. And so as all these things have come out, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you're welcome, Ben Platt. Like,
it's because of you.
I did not hit you with my car, and I know we don't know each other, but like I hope you appreciate it.
Wow.
So yeah. I don't know why that story just like popped in my brain, but like I was like, you said that you met oh my gosh, what's her name again?
Yael Grobglas.
Yeah, you said it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I remember this. Truly crazy.
Yeah. So besides TV and film, do you want to continue on Broadway? You talked about originating. Like, what's the ultimate career path for you?
Honestly, two goals of mine are to originate a show. I feel like this is kind of a longer term goal because I think it'll take some time, but like I would love to originate a role like from the first workshop or like somewhere early on, like before actually, like when it's still a lab or when it's just a reading, like even if it was just like in someone's living room. So like I would love to do that. I would love to and like take it to Broadway and originate it. I'd love to be on like original cast recording. And I also would love to do a revival of something. I would love to be a principal actor in a revival.
What show? If you could pick any show.
Right now, Bonnie and Clyde is on my list. I would really love. I want them to rework the book, and then I want them to take it back to Broadway and make me Bonnie. So that's my goal. I'm just like manifesting these things.
Hey, you got to do it.
Originating Bonnie.
If you could be on any TV show that's out now, what would it be?
Oh, it would definitely be Succession. I know you haven't watched it, but like I'm such a huge fan of Brian Cox and Jeremy Strong and just that entire cast. And oh my gosh, Kieran Culkin. Yeah, Kieran Culkin's also in it. It's just like epic. And I think the Shakespeare nerd in me loves it because they totally make it Shakespeare. It's King Lear, it's The Tempest. Like there are so many, it's just such an epic and amazing, the writing in the show is amazing. So I would love to be on a really, really well written TV show, because I think they're honestly kind of hard to find nowadays.
Yeah, there's a lot of content.
Yeah, there's a lot of content.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't know. I would love to make like my TV or film debut, maybe this year or next year. That'd be fun. So,
what advice would you give?
Oh, yeah. Prom, which is amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yes. I was gonna say we both worked with the extraordinary Casey Nicola, who's
Casey.
He's just,
I know.
He's just wonderful. He's so wonderful.
He's awesome. Yeah.
What advice would you give your younger self? I love this question.
I would absolutely tell her to not worry about what anyone else is doing or thinking about what she's doing, about how she's, I guess, progressing or not progressing. I think the thing I wish I knew when I was younger was that I didn't need to care about what people thought. I think I grew up very much, I think I was way more nervous. I was way more shy as a kid in the social world. I really cared about what my teachers thought of me. If like my teachers thought I sang the song really well, or if I got all of the beats in, like I think I really searched for approval, especially in high school and college. And I think the thing I wish I could tell my younger self and tell younger artists who are there now, that you will learn and grow so much faster if you just stop looking for that approval, stop looking for that affirmation,
or just allow yourself to fail too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, like fail forward, like fail and keep going forward, because you just don't help yourself if you are only like, if you're in the middle of your song and you're just worrying about like, why did like Gabriel in row 4 yawn, and that like destroys the rest of your performance, because you're like, oh my gosh, like he was so bored, like I must be horrible. If you like, it can just so easily take you down a horrible route. And so I would just tell myself, just not worry about what everyone else is thinking or doing. Like you're also not racing anyone to the finish line. Everyone has their own finish line, which, okay, this is really dark, but like, it's like you die. Like the finish line is like your life is
right. Yeah.
Like, no one else is going to take, like, someone getting to like their goal first will never affect your life. Like unless you take it and you're a person who like really hates it when other people succeed, like that's a whole other conversation. But like it like you're on your own track, you're in your own race. So
yeah, I really believe that as long as you work hard and stay grounded and humble, what's meant to be yours is already yours. And it's just about timing and, opportunity meeting, I don't know, hard work, but it's hard sometimes though. Because I'm very impatient too. And when something isn't happening fast enough, it's hard. But
and it's hard too, because people constantly, it's hard when like if all of your friends around you are all succeeding and booking, and like they're like everyone, like I remember I started to feel this way during the pandemic, and I'm sure some other people did too, who live on opposite coast. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, like everyone's moving to LA, like what am I doing here in blah blah blah, like in New York or somewhere in the Midwest? Like I should be moving to LA and like doing that. And I was like, wait, I lived in LA for in California my entire life, and LA was not for me. So I don't need to feel that way. Like I don't need to stress myself. Like just because everyone, like you don't have to follow the herd. Like you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. This is pretty deep, but what do you want? And I mean, you probably don't know yet, but what do you want your legacy to be as a performer and as I know it's a little deep.
That's a good question though. Whoa, what do I want my legacy to be?
As of now.
I mean, in some ways, okay, I guess in some ways, something that I am really proud of that I stumbled upon, which we've kind of already talked about, it's like, but part of my legacy, I know, obviously, like if I died tomorrow, like something you would see under my name is like Cailen Fu died 24, first Asian American Regina George, like, and I think that's pretty cool. And so I think I guess that's part of my legacy right now. It's something that's kind of already there, but that's
amazing.
Gosh, but I think like I I guess I don't really know what I want my legacy to be, because I also don't have any fixed ideas of what my life is going to be and how it's going to turn out. Because I could literally end up leaving the business and becoming like an explorer, and I go find some like dinosaur bones. Like, I don't know. But I think right now, I guess part of my legacy, like I'm really proud that I'm the first Asian American Regina George, and that provided me a lot of opportunity to reach out and have and like teach and have experiences with other younger Asian American artists or people of color who were like, hey, like I didn't think I could do that role because I've never seen someone who looks like me or who isn't blonde and white. And it was really cool to see you and like to see Ashley De La Rosa. So like that's been kind of honestly like a very like iconic moment in my life. Like a very, very big moment of like, oh, whoa, like I am like the first of blah, blah, blah,
pioneer.
of yeah. And so that's really cool. And I guess that's exciting that that'll be part of my legacy of some sort. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
I've learned so much, and I'm so excited to share this interview because there's just so much to learn from you and take away. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Of course.